What do sophomores in college with superhuman abilities mean? Stay tuned to find out. Hello, welcome to another session of Dro Talks. Dro here, and today we're going to be talking about Superpowers Year 2. Written by Drew Hayes and narrated by Kyle McCarly. For background on this story, link below, link at the end, and link probably like right here somewhere. Right here. This looks like a good place for a link. Link right here to my other review of Superheroes Year 1. To give a little context to the story, we're going to go over the characters real quick. We got our main characters and their secrets out. Everyone on campus knows that they were once Powards, and Powards, as if you remember and you recall, are basically shunned upon society due to their danger that they present to themselves and to society. Will their friends stand by them? We'll find out. So our main characters, the once Powards, now Supers in their sophomore year, are Nick, Vince, Mary, Alice, Herschel, and Roy. So we meet back year 2, and right off the bat, they are pariahs. This book deals with a lot of topics. The main topic is prejudice, and they definitely have to deal with it. Their class is split. Some of their former friends shun them from their origins of being Powards, where some of their more faithful friends stand at their side. So year 1 was all about training, a lot of getting beaten up and getting stronger. That was pretty much the main focus. Year 2, the main focus is all about teamwork. Alex, which is similar to Mary, except with that he believes he's a Jedi as opposed to a telepath. Camille, who is the only healer in the class. And the story ensues. Same thing with Superpowers Year 1. This has no apparent villain. Coach George is in prison. Persephone is missing. And you can say that they're the villains. But there's no one knows exactly why they did what they did, what their motives are. And then we begin that year. We begin the sophomore year just like that. So in the superpowered books, you're going to find out right off the bat that there's a few key points that take place in each book. One is Halloween. We'll talk about Halloween a little bit. 2 is the river trip, and we'll talk about that as well. And then the third one is spread out throughout the entire book, which is basically the examinations that these individuals got to go through for their superhero certification training. And those are really the highlight points. Every point from A to B is really just character world building type of storytelling. You might be tempted to just skip those parts because they are long. These are long books, but they are done so well. Again, you just can't go through it. But we're talking about story right now. So let's talk about some of the supporting characters. As we mentioned earlier, we got Alex, we got Will, who is a tech genius. Alex is your Jedi. We got Thomas, who has tendrils of energy. Sasha, who's a speedster and was very prejudiced against Powards and was actually Vince's girlfriend last year. I'm pretty sure they broke up. Jill, who is Will's twin sister and can actually manipulate technology. We got Violet, who can make herself and objects that she wields dense or less dense. It's actually pretty cool. We got Chad. Chad's important. We'll talk about Chad. Chad has supreme control of his body on a molecular level. Then we have Shane, who he can manipulate the shadows and turn them into physical objects. And then we have Angela, which is actually Shane's older sister, and she's actually a junior. And we don't know what her power is, but we can imagine it's something related to Shane's. In this story, we also start to get a glimpse of heroes. Actually, they're mentioned by name. We got a little bit of that last year when they were writing their thesis, but here we actually get a little bit more background. We get to know them a little bit. One is Captain Starlight gets mentioned. We got Zero mentioned several times. We got Globe, which of course is our villain. That he was one of the greatest turned rogue. Shimmerpath, Titan, the Alchemist, just to name a few. So just to finish off the talks about characters, again, these worlds are huge. Let's just give a quick mention to the professors. We got Dean Blaine, which he's Zero, and his ability is basically he creates a field around himself that nulls all superpowers. Pretty awesome. We got Professor Hill, which we don't know what his power is. Professor Stone, which is a very strong telekinetic. Professor Pendleton, which we don't know his power, but we do know that he was in prison. and that he was also part of Class of Legends. We start getting a lot of flashbacks on Class of Legends, which is another world building avenue that this year gives us. Professor Fletcher, who was brought in to replace Coach George, he has an electric based ability. And we got Professor Cole, who she looks like a mummy, and we don't know anything beyond that point at this moment. And then we got our two faithful babysitters. We got Mr. Transport and Mr. Numbers. That sums up most of the characters. Year 2 is more structured. Sophomore year, they have 3 that they can take. Junior year, 2. And they finally have to choose just one in their senior year. And those, of course, are close combat, ranged combat. Then we got weapons, focus, control, and subtlety. So let's talk about the main trial that happens first, and that is, of course, Halloween. Rich has the ability to lock people in their minds only by looking at them. Rich Weaver locked Nick, Alice, and Mary in their minds. And he does that because Nick, being Nick, was talking smack about Rich's ability, and Rich was like, oh, you think it's not a useful ability? Boom. Not really a big deal. We learn a little bit about Nick and Mary, in the sense that we learn that Mary can walk between dreams, and we learn a little bit about Nick's darker, younger life. But the main factor that happens there is in Alice's mind, where a visitor ends up being a walker in dreams like Mary, but much more powerful, and he tells her that her mom is alive. So when they come out of the state, Alice goes off on Rich. She goes off on Rich, and she actually pulls lights from the ceiling and crashes them to the floor. Chad is there, and Chad looks like he's about to destroy his teammate because Rich is on his team. But Rich is like, I did not plant that in there. I wanted her to be in a happy state, wherever that happy state was. And the reason Chad was so angry is because Chad also lost his father. His father was actually murdered by Globe. Yep. So he's like, you teasing people about dead parents? I ain't having that. Remember, Chad is like hands down the strongest student in their class. So Halloween, we learned 2 things. One, maybe Alice's mom may be alive, which means her father has been lying to her this whole year, and her father was lying to her last year when she found out he was actually the alchemist. So that's 2 lies for Alice's dad. Not looking good, Alice's dad. Not looking good. And we also learned that Alice actually can't fly. She can manipulate gravity. So that was the big takeaway from Halloween. And then comes the very first team bout. And turns out Michael was on that opposing team. Michael almost kills Alex during that bout, but the team leader stops him. But then when Michael gets to face Vince, which Vince actually almost lost right away, but Camille, which is a healer, healed him and brought him back onto the playing board. Michael basically lost the competition for his team in his hatred for Vince. But this fight was awesome, because this is the first time we got to see Vince just completely dominate someone. So Michael has a nice base ability. He was the bully from last year. He jumped Vince, almost destroyed him. He let them know that they were superpowered. He froze his team captain that was about to capture the flag. That's right, capture the flag. Vince just destroyed him. He showed him how Michael couldn't compete against him on hand-to-hand combat. And he showed him how Michael could no longer freeze him because Vince is an energy absorber. So he can absorb fire, he can absorb electricity, and we find out this year that he can absorb a lot more than that. So during the year, there was a revelation that came out. Another revelation, as if them being outed as cowards wasn't enough. We find out that Vince's dad that raised him, Vince was homeless, and was basically adopted by a homeless man and died in a horrendous explosion, was actually Globe. And not only is that revelation huge, the bigger revelation is that Globe is alive. Not only is Vince's dad alive, but Globe is alive. And how do we know that? Because he broke Coach George out of prison without hurting a single soul. He didn't kill anyone, but he broke him out of prison. And this puts Chad and Vince on ends because, again, Globe killed Chad's father. But Chad is amazing. Chad loses control and almost inadvertently kills both Vince and Camille. But Vince absorbs a huge piece of rock that falls on him. He absorbs the kinetic energy. Chad basically kind of runs away, or guided away by his friends and, people that care about him. And him and Vince make peace. Like I said, they are not their fathers, and they are not going to be swayed by decisions and actions that happen to their fathers. Because, they're, I won't say they're best friends, but they do have a high level of respect for each other. But because of this revelation, this agency of humans that monitor superhero activities, because that's another thing we learned. Supers do not monitor themselves. Humans monitor them to make sure all this superhero puzzle fit together. At the end of the day, even though someone can turn water to gold, can turn invisible, you got a mundane, ordinary human telling him when he has to punch in and punch out. So this agency comes in and they want Vince out of there. He is a public nightmare. The son of Globe cannot be a hero. And actually, villains, their children have protections to prevent that sort of bias. But since Vince was never officially adopted, they're looking to get him out. And unfortunately, Vince, although he's very powerful, he's afraid of his power. And he's very responsible. And he never uses it. He uses it just enough to get by. And what does that mean? That means he's middle of the pack. And what does that mean? That he's not going to make it to third year. So this is where the final test comes into play. And I'm not going to give anything away. All I'm going to say is that Nick, being the mastermind that he is, creates a plan in such a way that allows everyone to see Vince's true potential. And year 2 ends. So what do I think of the story? I'd give this a 10 out of 5 if I could. These stories are awesome. Narration, Kyle McCarly. I said it on my first audiobook review of this story, and I'm going to say it again. This guy is a genius. One narrator. You saw all the characters I just mentioned. All of them. And I didn't even mention all of them. They all have a distinctness to them. Very individual. You can tell just like that once one comes on and one leaves. The narrator himself, the overlord, the one that's telling the story, has his own voice. The girls sound like girls. They sound like teenagers. They sound like old men. They sound like battle-hardened criminals. This guy, he is on the top of his game. So yeah, easily. Narration, 5 out of 5. Listenability, I'm already listened to this 3 times. So yeah, 5 out of 5. What does that mean? A second, 5 out of 5. Year 1, I gave a 5 out of 5. Year 2, I gave a 5 out of 5. I've only touched a little bit on the surface of what these books really have. I hope you enjoy it, but trust me, it's not enough. I did go more in depth in this book than I did the last one. So let me know. Watch both of them. You're not only supporting me, but you're helping me become a better reviewer for you. Watch review 1 and review 2. Let me know which one you thought was better. More detail, less detail. I'm here to work for you. So your comments will be much appreciated in that regard. So have you listened to the Superpower series? I'm excited to see what you think about it. It's my second review. I'm going to do the third one. There's a standalone one, which is called Corpies. I'll do that as well. And when year 4 comes out on audiobook, I'm already reading through it. But when it comes out on audiobook, I'll listen to that as well. And you can expect that review as quickly as I finish it. That's been Dro Talks. Thank you for listening. Hit that like and subscribe. Your love is much appreciated. Ring that bell to get notified. And we'll see you next time.